The fire happened so suddenly that not all of the residents had time to react. This old house should have been demolished long ago. In just 2 weeks, the residents were supposed to move into new buildings. Everyone knew that the wiring was in a terrible state, but they didn't expect anything like this, especially at night. People were taking out and throwing out of the windows everything they could save. Suddenly, one of the neighbors realized that in the apartment on the first floor lived a woman who had recently given birth to twins. Her husband was a truck driver, who was currently away on a trip. The flames had already engulfed almost the entire building, but still, the firefighters rushed to the windows. They quickly found the babies and took them out through the window. But right after that, the roof began to crack. The firemen stepped back. A minute later, the building collapsed. The people were silent. There, under a pile of burning debris, there was a young woman, the mother of twins. The boy was less injured, but the girl was in a very bad condition. First one of the babies started crying, then the other. The doors of the ambulance slammed shut, and it left the scene with all its sirens honking. The father was not informed of what had happened until the morning. But even before Lucas arrived, his mother showed up at the pediatric ward. Anna looked at the nurses in the emergency room and uttered, "My grandchildren are here. Who can I talk to about their condition? We have many children here." "Which ones are we talking about, honey?" "I'm talking about the children from yesterday's fire." "Hurry up, bring a doctor here." The doctor showed up 5 minutes later. He had already been told that the grandmother of the injured twins had come to the ward. "Hello, doctor. I need you to tell me everything about my grandchildren's condition." "Well, the boy is almost uninjured. He can be discharged in a day or two. But the girl has a severe burn on one side of her face. Of course, as time passes and she grows, the burn needs to be treated, otherwise the scar will be too visible." Anna wrinkled her nose. The twins already had bad heredity, and now the scar. Nightmare. Anna has always been against this marriage. The girl her son took home was from a dysfunctional family. Her father froze to death when he was drunk. Her mother worked 3 jobs and also died early. Anna said, "This girl has no place next to my son. Lucas, you have a brilliant future. You have studies and a career ahead of you. Think about it." But her beloved boy, her only son, disobeyed her for the first time in his life. He found this girl on the street and took her home. They started living together in a building that was about to collapse. Lucas studied at the best university of law, but now, instead of finishing his studies or looking for a job as a lawyer, he got a job as a truck driver, because now he needed to support his family. Anna immediately told this girl to never show up at her house, but her son stopped visiting his parents as well. His father, Anna's husband, tried to talk to her. "Anna, you grew up in a poor family too. You came to the city from the countryside. Think of your own past. You didn't become successful right away either. Why do you hate that girl so much? I didn't work hard my whole life to get back to the same point. Our son needs a good, decent girl who will push him forward, not slow him down." Her husband only sighed. No one had listened to him in this family for a long time. His only function was to make money. A lot of money. And that's what he was doing. Lucas's father was a lawyer, a very successful and famous lawyer. At home, he was always quiet and obedient, but in court, he became a different person. He made a lot of money because his clients were mostly wealthy people who were constantly suing for their wealth and trying to protect their assets. Anna insisted that their son should go to the university and then become his father's assistant. But her plans were ruined by this girl. Lucas arrived in the evening. He wanted to run straight to the hospital, but Anna stopped him. "Lucas, sit down. We need to talk." "Mom, what are you talking about? My babies are there. I need to see them right now. How am I supposed to live without Stacy now?" Lucas cried. "Lucas, it's okay. Don't cry. You have a son. A son. What about my daughter? Karen, listen to me. Listen to me carefully. You won't be able to raise the kids on your own anyway. You'll have to come home and live with us. I will raise your son, and I will do everything I can to make sure he grows up to be a decent manual." But the girl, she suffered severe burns. She has a burn on her face. She'll be ugly for the rest of her life. You know, we don't need that kind of burden. She won't do us any good. If you want, you can take both babies home. but in this case, you'll have to handle it on your own and bury your wife yourself. I'm not going to help you. Mom, how can you say that? They're your grandchildren. Grandchildren from that girl? No, thanks. I hate you, Mom. You know what? I can handle everything without your help. Lucas ran outside. His mother stared at him through the window until he disappeared. Her husband walked over and stood beside her. Anna, what on earth are you doing? I'm sure it would be better for everyone. Are you serious? Our son just ran away in a state of shock. What if he does something to himself? He won't. I know my son well enough. Lucas came back at night. He was very drunk and fell asleep on the floor in the hallway. Anna put a pillow under his head, covered him with a blanket, and then returned to her bedroom. Dear, please prepare all the necessary paperwork. We need to abandon Karen as soon as possible and do it in secret. We don't need any rumors. And we're picking Max up from the hospital tomorrow morning. Don't forget about it. Anna, I'm not going to do that. You will do it anyway. That's out of the question. Think about your son, and about the fact that you can at least keep your grandson safe. The next morning, Lucas was silent. He was silent when his mother gave him orders, silent when his father gave him some papers to sign. He was silent when they told him the funeral was tomorrow. He was silent all the way to the cemetery. And there, when everything was finished, he fell on a fresh grave and cried, "Forgive me, Stacy, forgive me. Try to understand and forgive me. Someday, when I have recovered from my grief, I will find our daughter. I will find her and ask for forgiveness." Anna waited patiently for her son to stop his hysterics. Then she walked him to the car and said, "From this day on you have a new life. In the morning, everyone will know that the girl has died. So no one will judge you. She will definitely be adopted by someone. You have nothing to worry about. You'll be home with your son for a week and then you'll start working as daddy's assistant. I hope you still remember what they taught you at the university." Then she got into the front seat with her husband. He looked at her and wondered, how is that possible that in so many years he never realized that he lived with a monster? Max. Cheers. This is the most high-profile case in a decade. Max was accepting congratulations. He was celebrating his high-profile victory at the best restaurant in the city. His grandmother was sitting next to him. She was the one who had been guiding him all his life, mentoring him. Without her help, he probably would not have achieved such success at the age of 30. Naturally, the first thing he said that night was words of gratitude to his beloved grandmother. His grandfather was sitting next to him. He was already old, but he could always give valuable advice. Besides, he was the one who started their dynasty of successful lawyers. Max didn't forget to thank him sincerely, too. Till the pioneer, the pathfinder of the family dynasty. Everybody had fun. Everything was just fine. Then Max stood up again. "Now, I want to raise a glass to my parents. Unfortunately, my mom doesn't see my success, but my dad told me a lot about her, and to me, she's always like a living person. Dad, I want to raise this glass to you. You've been there for me all my life, helping me. Thank you for everything." The people at the table cheered. Lucas knew this wasn't his son's last toast, not his last announcement. He was just waiting for Anna's reaction when Max announced that he and Natalie had decided to get married. Lucas knew Anna would be furious. It was time for Max to get married. Anna has already found the right girl for him. An ugly, stupid girl, but she was the daughter of the new city mayor. That girl already knew that she would soon be the fiancée of a handsome, successful guy. However, this guy didn't pay much attention to her yet, but he spent a lot of time with his assistant Natalie. Natalie was only a couple of years younger than Max. Yes, she was beautiful and smart, but she was just an assistant. And it's ridiculous for such a man to marry some kind of servant. Max waited. He realized that as soon as he and Natalie announced their news, the party would be over. Grandma would make a scene. Max knew that Natalie was also aware of the impending events, but he was sure she would be able to withstand it all. Lucas watched the guests. Lucas could see that Max had decided to wait a bit, so he could relax for now. His thoughts turned back in time to 5 years ago. Max had won his first case then. They went to the cemetery to visit his mother. Lucas put flowers on Stacy's grave, as usual. Suddenly, Max asked an unexpected question. "Dad, Why do you always bring flowers only for Mother? Why don't you ever bring flowers for Karen? Lucas didn't know what to say to Max. He couldn't make something up and lie, but he couldn't tell the truth either. He just shrugged and remained silent. Max did not insist, but decided that someday he would definitely return to this question. And the older he got, the more he realized that there was something weird. He couldn't understand why his beloved grandmother blamed his mother for everything. He didn't remember her at all. Max was only 2 months old at the time of the tragedy, but his father told him a lot of stories. Max realized that his father still loved her. He also realized that something was sorely burning his soul. Dad was the one who insisted that Max should live on his own. He said that he would not allow Anna to make his son as weak-willed as he was. Max didn't really understand what that meant until he moved away from his grandmother. But when he realized how great it was to live on his own, he thanked his father again and again. After the first successful case, Lucas decided that Max was already independent and wise enough. Meanwhile, Lucas had other things to do, much more important. He started looking for Karen, but soon realized that his mother had done a great job. The hospital records indicated that she had really died, but Lucas knew she wasn't. He found a doctor who was working there at the time. He was already retired but said he didn't remember anything like that. So despite Lucas's money and connections, he couldn't find out anything. For almost a year he was sending out some inquiries, looking for those who could possibly work at the hospital that night, but all to no avail. Eventually, he gave up. He'd done everything he could. Maybe Karen really was long gone. The people in the restaurant perked up. Lucas realized that this was going to be the culmination of the night. He made his way to the table, grabbed a glass of champagne, and prepared to listen. He realized that his mother had done a lot for both him and Max, but he was also firmly convinced that she had no heart. Yes, he had treated her as anyone would treat their mother, but he had no love for her. Max stood up. All the guests were already slightly drunk, but not too much. They immediately realized that the most important speech was about to take place. I would like to announce the most important news for today. And I want to say that I didn't just win the case, I won the lottery of life. 3 years ago, I met a wonderful woman. In those 3 years, I realized that there are no better women in the universe. As soon as Max began his speech, the mayor's daughter looked at Anna nervously. She didn't understand what was going on. Who was he talking about? She was the one who would soon be his fiancée. But Anna placed her hand on the girl's shoulder reassuringly. Anna was sure that no one in their family would ever dare to disobey her. Lucas once tried to go against his mother's decisions but paid a high price for it. Yesterday, I won this long-term difficult case in which Natalie helped me a lot. Without her help, this case wouldn't have been completed so quickly and easily. After the win, we set a date for the wedding. The guests shouted joyfully and applauded, but grandmother turned pale. Grandfather smiled in a way that his wife couldn't see, but the mayor's daughter jumped up from her seat. She did it so awkwardly that she knocked over the salad that was on the edge of the table. She rushed toward the exit, wiping off the rest of the mayonnaise and salad leaves along the way. Anna rushed after her. "Don't worry, I'll solve this problem and call you tomorrow." The girl looked at her unhappily. "Please don't. Max loves her. I don't want to get in the way." Darling, if only we could do everything the way we want. We'd all live like animals. I'll call you very soon." Grandma returned to the table. The expression on her face didn't bode anything good. "Max, we need to talk." "Grandma, I know everything you want to tell me. I'll tell you right away. I'm not going to change my mind. I've made my decision, and you can't change it. And don't try to threaten me. I've been living on my own for a long time, and I make good money. I don't depend on you in any way." Then he kissed his grandmother on the cheek. She was confused and suddenly realized that she could no longer control the life of her grandson. Anna cried, "I raised him, I worked hard, I educated him, and now he treats me like this. Why?" Max was a little surprised by this outcome. He was confused, but Lucas squeezed his hand. "Son, don't be nervous. Your grandmother is a good actress." Max took a closer look and realized his father was right. Then he sat down next to her and said, "Grandma, come on, let's celebrate." Anna realized that it was time to end the show. She stood up abruptly and turned to her husband. "We are leaving. I have no intention of watching my grandson ruin his life. She gave Natalie a contemptuous glance. Stupid assistant. Where did you come from? Are you trying to make a nice life for yourself at the expense of my grandson? It won't work. I may be old, but I have enough connections in this city. You'll pay for everything you did. Natalie turned pale. Anna, accompanied by her husband, was already leaving the restaurant. Max looked at her with confusion. How dare she say that to Natalie? She was still just a stranger to Anna. He hugged Natalie, but she only shook her head. Don't touch me for 5 minutes. Let me calm down. I'll tell them to call the cleaning lady. Everything here is covered with salad and tears. Max stepped back. He knew Natalie could control any emotion, but it would take time. 2 minutes later, a young girl approached the table. She was in good shape, but she had a headscarf on her head, and her hair covered half of her face. The clothes under her apron were clean but very cheap. Max was so angry that everything inside him was literally shaking. He poured himself a glass of liquor and drank it in one gulp. Lucas stepped back a little so that it would be easier for the girl to clean up. She deftly picked up the rest of the salad and grabbed a rag. Many people already left the table, but Max remained seated. The girl said without raising her head, "Excuse me, could you please move over a little?" "No, I can't. You should remove your hair from your eyes because you can't see anything. You're waving your dirty rag over my drink." Lucas looked disapprovingly at his son, but suddenly decided to say, "Why such a young girl can't find another job? I don't think you ever dreamed of being a janitor. Or do you expect to meet a rich suitor here? Well, with a body like that, it's quite possible. It's just that your outfit isn't right. You should wear a shorter skirt." At that moment, Natalie walked up. She didn't understand why Max was so angry with the cleaning lady. "Max, Natalie, wait. I can't understand. Look, this girl is really nice, but she can't find a rich suitor at the restaurant. Or maybe you're ugly." The girl froze, then straightened up. She turned out to be not so young, about 30 years old or so. One side of her face was completely covered by her hair, but the other. Max froze. Natalie shrieked, and all the guests fell silent. Max's copy was standing in front of them. The exact same person, but a female version. She was standing there looking at Max in silence. He was silent, too. Then the young woman said, "I feel very sorry for you. What is the most important thing in life to you? Money? Position in society? For me, the most important thing is life itself. Yes, I work as a janitor every night. I also work at the factory during the day. But not to buy myself another pair of shoes, to go to a restaurant, or to insult someone who is weaker. I work hard to buy expensive medicine for my mother. But you cannot understand that." The girl turned around and wanted to leave, but Lucas stood in front of her. He looked at her intently. Then Lucas reached out and moved her hair away from her cheek. He already knew what he was going to see there. There were scars on her cheek, her chin, and her forehead. The woman turned away and fixed her hair again. Lucas kept looking at her with tears in his eyes. "Karen, how do you know me?" The girl looked fearfully at Lucas. Max turned pale. "Dad, who is it?" "Max, meet your sister Karen." The guests started whispering something. Natalie stared in surprise at the girl and the men. She didn't understand anything at all. His sister, but she had died right after the fire. What is going on? Max was also tormented by this question. "Dad, I don't understand. Karen is buried next to my mother." But Lucas was silent. Then Max asked another question. "Is that the reason you never put flowers on Karen's grave?" The girl didn't understand what was going on either. What brother? What grave he was talking about? Her mother is at home. She's very sick but alive. What was going on? But she noticed that she and this young man looked very much alike. Karen was frightened and ran away. She took off her apron in the utility room and ran outside through the emergency exit. Neither Lucas nor Max followed her. It wouldn't be hard to find her. The guests left the restaurant. Only Lucas, Max, and Natalie remained at the large table. "Dad, is there anything you want to tell me?" "Yes, it's time." And Lucas began to tell everything from the beginning. He told about meeting Stacy, taking her home to meet his parents, working as a driver after university to support his family, to make sure that his little Max and Karen had everything they needed. He told them about that fire. Max already knew this story, but he kept silent. He needed to understand why the buried child was alive and why for 30 years no one ever contacted her. Lucas continued. He wasn't justifying himself in any way. He was just revealing the facts. When he got to the point where he started looking for Karen, Max interrupted his father. Why didn't you tell me? Together we would have had a better chance of finding out something. Max, I didn't want anyone to know about this. They'd put Grandma in jail right away. If I was at least sure Karen was alive, I would have told you, but I wasn't sure. I didn't find any trace at all. According to all the records, no children were transferred from the hospital to the orphanage at that time. I thought she really died in the hospital, so I stopped looking. Max was holding his head with his hands in shock. Natalie put her arm around him. She stroked his hair with her hand. There was silence at the table. Dad, what do we do now? I mean, she's never going to forgive us. Max, I don't know. All I know is that I have to find her, beg for forgiveness, and help her. It's not your fault that your father was such a coward. I'll go with you. Don't even try to say number. Max stood up. At this moment, Natalie intervened. Max, Lucas, it's getting late. I don't think it's a good idea to talk to her right now. The girl is scared. Moreover, she mentioned her sick mother. Wait until morning. Also, you'll have time to find out something about her and about the woman she's living with. Lucas sighed. Natalie's right. We need to find the manager and get her address. Max found a waiter, waved him over, and he was there in no time. Can we talk to the restaurant manager? Sure. Wait a minute. The manager didn't know anything about the girl. He only gave the address and said that Karen's mother was sick and that she'd been working for them for over a year. Apparently, she wasn't married. It's unlikely anyone would marry a woman with a scar on her face. They decided to go to Anna's. Anna felt unwell when she saw her grandson, her son, and Natalie on the doorstep at night. What happened? Why aren't you home? Lucas said. Mom, we met Karen. Anna immediately realized which Karen he was talking about. She sank heavily into the chair. I see. What do you want to know? Karen came home. Her mother could hear her sobbing. Karen, sweetheart, what's wrong? Karen ran to her room, fell to the floor, and hugged her mother's knees. Mom, tell me it's not true. Tell me you're my real mother. The woman closed her eyes. That was it. Now she had to tell her the whole truth. Karen, a long time ago, an ambulance brought you and your brother to our hospital after a fire. He wasn't injured, but your face was burned. The family took only the boy from the hospital, but they've decided to abandon you. Your grandmother was rich and powerful. She paid for a fake death certificate for you and then paid me to secretly bring you to the orphanage. I couldn't do that, so I asked her to help me make it look like you were my biological daughter. She was fine with that. She made one condition: I had to leave the city for at least a few years. I agreed, and a week later I picked you up from the hospital and left. We came back to this city 4 years later. I'm sorry. I couldn't tell you. I've always loved you, from the very first day. I'm sorry, my dear girl. Karen fell asleep almost in the morning. She didn't blame her mother, but it was terrifying to find out that she had been abandoned because she had scars on her face. It's like kicking out a kitten because it's ugly. She was awakened by the doorbell ringing. Karen got up and headed to open the door. Her mother was already awake, but she couldn't get up that fast. On the doorstep, she saw the men she had met yesterday. The one who was her brother and the one who was, or rather could possibly be her father. What do you want? Karen, please, let's talk. Can we come in? The girl stepped back. Max and Lucas entered the apartment. It was very modest but very clean and cozy. They walked into the room. There was a woman sitting on the couch. She looked at them with frightened eyes. Hello! Lucas walked over to her and then said, Thank you for not giving up, for not being afraid, for raising Karen. There was so much pain and regret in his voice that the woman couldn't answer anything and just nodded. Would they help Karen? Would they really be willing to help her little girl? 6 months later, Max and Natalie got married. They had to reschedule it because Max wanted his sister to be a bridesmaid at the wedding. Karen and Natalie became best friends. Natalie was fine with rescheduling their wedding date, even though her belly was already bigger and she had to get a new dress on. Max joked, How did that happen? I proposed to one woman, but I'm marrying 3 people at once. Natalie was pregnant with twins. Karen had just returned from abroad yesterday. Max and Lucas found one of the best plastic surgeons for Karen and paid for the surgery. Max hadn't seen her yet, but Natalie was already marveling at her friend's transformation. Karen forgave her biological father, though it wasn't easy. They placed Karen's mother in the best clinic, and as the treatment began to work and the woman gradually recovered, she turned out to be a very pretty lady. Max saw the way his father looked at her. Lucas literally couldn't take his eyes off her. When they arrived at the registry office on their wedding day, Max was nervous and Lucas joked, "Don't worry, Natalie definitely won't run away. You'll always be together now." "Dad, have you seen Karen?" "No, she told me not to visit her and said she would show her new face at the wedding." At that moment, a white car pulled up to the entrance. The bridesmaids got out of the car, and then the bride herself. Even though the dress was wide, the outline of Natalie's belly was clearly visible. Max smiled and rushed over to the bride. On the way, he looked at everyone who had arrived, but he didn't see Karen. "Where's Karen?" he asked his wife-to-be. "Hey, brother." He turned around. Karen was standing in front of him. She was smiling. Karen was so beautiful, a lot like him, except her facial features were more delicate. "Karen." Max hugged her, and Karen suddenly cried. Anna didn't come to the wedding because she was sick. Her faithful husband stayed by her side. He refused to divorce her, even after everything that had happened. "I can't leave her. Yes, she's done many terrible things, but she's my wife.